seven council fires are the Teton, the Yankton, Yanktonai, Mdewakan, Sistenwapton. So these get Sistenwapton, the Dakota are more towards Minnesota up in the northeastern side of South Dakota. Yanktonai is like in the southern part of South Dakota, and then Lakota is going to be Standing Rock, Cheyenne River, and Oglala. So these are the seven council fires. And the unique thing about the Oceti Sakowin essential understandings in South Dakota is that we're all, Lakota. I mean, Dakota and Lakota. So our language is all similar. We're like this, like big nation, right? And so ultimately, like our tribes are all quite similar. We all come, have similar language and culture and everything. So when we move into North Dakota and we start talking about understandings, we call it the Native American understandings because there are more tribes in North Dakota and there's separate tribes with separate languages and separate. So it's unique to South Dakota because all of the tribes in South Dakota can use these, and then in North Dakota it would be a little bit different. So they're Native American understandings, and they're just a little bit different and more general, so that all of the tribes that are in North Dakota can use them. So that's a little explanation to the Oceti Sakowin, and that's why they're so unique, is because all of the schools in South Dakota, public, private, BIE, tribal grant, they can all use these, and the goal is to use them. A lot of times though, we get kind of some pushback because, and it's not unheard of that people are afraid to use them because they don't want to misinterpret them, or they don't feel confident enough to be teaching this. And the whole reason why it's organized like this is that so anybody can use it, native teachers and non-native teachers alike. People from South Dakota, California, Hawaii, wherever, they can use these, and they're invited to use them. So in Lakota culture, like if you're invited, then that's the ultimate form of respect. And these are created as an invitation for other people to look into our teachings, and feel free and welcome to use them and to create an understanding for yourself that you can share with your students or other teachers. That's the general overview of it. So we'll get into, I'm gonna go over these real quick. I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on every understanding because you can read them, but the overview of it is lands and environment. So we're gonna talk about the standards here, that these are not standards that are typical academic in the academic sense, and that they're neither comprehensively exhaustive of all the content connected with the understanding, and they are not mastery based. They each represent a strong starting place for learning and instructional design, and that's every one of these understandings. There isn't like an assessment that goes with it. Nobody's getting scored low or high on their ability to know or to learn them, but the goal is to just recognize them and to include them in other subjects as well. So I'm going to kind of go through this in Wold Lakota for you all, so you know where it's at and you kind of know how to navigate through it. So OSU 1 suggested differentiated approaches for instruction. There's suggestions here, very broad. Color a map of South Dakota, identifying the reservations, research and develop a report on communal ownership prior to European contact. So, and this is still part of it. And every essential understanding has a song, and the song is in English and Lakota. So,
how did I not know that?
Every song, is written or translated by Earl Bullhead, who is no longer with us, So and the people that originally started the essential understandings, the people in the elder videos, my brother-in-law and my mother-in-law sister, they're no longer with us. So a lot of these understandings and this material is really precious to us, and it's the legacy of our ancestors that continues through this work, and it's important, and it's really meaningful and really sentimental in a lot of ways to a lot of families in Oceti Sakowin country. But the second understanding is identity and strength. The first, the standard here, I'm just going to go over the first one. Standard 2 point one is to demonstrate the knowledge of the Oceti Sakowin people's interrelationship with spiritual, physical, social, and emotional health. And so we talk about that extended description of the summary. Again, there's going to be some differentiated approaches, some suggestions for instruction. And these are the bullet points here are the topics for lessons that you can create or people can create around them. And that's what's really good about it, is that it's open to that. You can make lessons. And then also on the Lakota site, there are lessons that are already made too. So you don't have to feel like you have to create something out of nothing. But and the second understanding is the Dakota flag song. And it's a little bit different than the Lakota flag song, but the lyrics and translation are provided by David Flute, and he is the director of the Office of Indian Education. He's my former boss. But so as understanding 3, culture and traditions, this one overall, explains the importance of language in the Oceti Sakowin Oyate, and the Oyate is the whole nation. So again, differentiated approach, invite an elder or fluent speaker to talk about the language. So I'm just gonna go through quick. And one thing that the 2024 updated Oceti Sakowin Essential Understandings has is an appendix that it hadn't had before. Because a lot of times it's, people need a little more guidance. And like I'm saying, it's not in the misconception in South Dakota is that this is written for Indigenous schools and people, and if you're not Native American, then you can't use it. I mean, it's kind of that's one of the challenges and obstacles of working in South Dakota. It's trying to break down those barriers of that separation when we could all be working together. And it's not like that all the time, but that's just one of the small challenges, is to get out of the mindset that this is the right way and the other way is the wrong way. No, they're both true if you look at it. Like all this history and stuff was all happening prior to colonization. And then even after colonization of education, we still have to master that. It works together more than it works separately, the way I see it. So in the appendix, which is something that we really worked hard on to make sure there's resources there for people that are really, really confident, or even if you're learning this for the first time, the appendices contain documents that will really lend themselves to helping understand as adults, so that we can teach our students and our children. The first document talks about the council fires and the tribes that are, associated with them. Appendices 4, there's a map of South Dakota here. This is Standing Rock. Standing Rock straddles North and South Dakota. The gray is Standing Rock and the yellow is Cheyenne River. So if you look up here, there's McLaughlin, and I live like right under McLaughlin. It talks about the locations. All of the treaties are here in Appendix 6, which is really important to like the older students that are learning about, the treaties and when they were established and what they were for and what they were supposed to be for. I think it's important.
Could you please click on one of those? Because I want to see that, and we're talking about primary sources. Does that actually go to the treaty?
So what it will do is take you to the National Archive catalog and get to look. In here at the treaty. I believe there's going to be some images of the original treaty, and then there should be like the text as well.
Yeah,
So it's an image of it, and then.
So you can click the links to go there.
Yeah, you can click the links and you can go there.
Wow.
It kind of has it. You could see a little bit better, but I know there's a spot in here where it has the texts. I mean, the in text, so you can actually read it, because this is like, it's an original document, I believe. So, or a picture of an original document. So it's maybe a little bit hard to read.
Okay, so don't make fun of me for not realizing this until this minute, but yes, obviously it's just written, handwritten out, right? But I just never thought of that because we always see government documents as being something typed up, but I'm just thinking that might be something kind of cool to show to your students too, because I'm that kid that hated handwriting and I don't know why I ever had to learn that stuff. And one reason might be because you'd never be able to read these documents.
It talks about what tribe, what treaty, what year, and when it was signed. And this is something that I know one of this group, a smaller, a subgroup, excuse me, worked on putting this together so that it's accessible because it goes with the, like the older students in the essential understandings. I believe in high school is when they start learning about treaties. But there's a glossary of terms here as well. The bibliography, some resources here that are really essential to, that will go along with a lot of the understandings. And then the additional resources, like I said, there's the Department of Education here, there's History Hub, the South Dakota Department of Tribal Relations. If you go there, and I just talk about this for briefly because the South Dakota Department of Tribal Relations and the South Dakota Office of Indian Education, there is, if you go to the site, and I know this is South Dakota, it's not, North Dakota, but I will get into North Dakota. There is a online training course that, if you're not feeling as confident in learning about the Oceti Sakowin essential understandings, you could take that course. I believe anybody could take it as well, but it's all online and it's here. So I just wanted to mention that just briefly. Yeah, the Wokia project is something that I created for the state, and then we also have a Wokia project on Standing Rock, which is a group of teachers working together to support each other and use the essential understandings in ways that benefit our students on Standing Rock. So let me go back into another link. So the other one that I shared, and I shared them backwards, so the bottom is where I'm starting, and I'm gonna go up. So these, like I said, the North Dakota essential understandings are similar to South Dakota's, but South Dakota's, like I said, we're all under the same umbrella. I'll just say it to explain it like that, because where all of our tribes are connected, and basically we think it's like one big tribe broken into little pieces, like smaller tribes, smaller reservations. And then when you get into North Dakota, you have actually separate tribes. So there's, all of the tribes in North Dakota don't all have the same language and they don't all practice, same cultural, there's differences. So these are separate tribes in North Dakota. So the essential understandings were created more broad in general, so that they can be used as well. There aren't as many resources as the OSCUs, and they can be found at the North Dakota Indy.gov. It's in the chat box, it's here. So, and I know Dr. DeMars will have all of these links too, if you aren't able to get him out of the chat box. So the understandings for North Dakota aren't as long and aren't as elaborate. Like I said, they needed to be adaptable to all of the tribes in North Dakota. Okay, so the first one is sacred relatives. We talk about that here. The second is learning and storytelling, sharing and generosity. The one that's not in South Dakota is the sense of humor one, and it should be, I think. But it's part of the culture. It's part of, I think, every tribal culture, and maybe other cultures too. But it's really important. And I'll just read it. It says, Native people have a rich history of shared sense of humor that includes teaching stories involving Domi. I don't know how to pronounce those. Like I said, those are my tribal languages. These stories and this unique sense of humor continue to support our resiliency and cohesiveness. So if you, I often tease Dr. DeMars, and I'm like, if we tease you, we like you, we trust you. And there's so much, there's the older people sense of humor. So that's part of the understandings in North Dakota. Number 5, tribal policies, treaties, and sovereignty. And if that is not, the treaties and everything aren't in, like I said, the North Dakota ones aren't as elaborate as the South Dakota ones, but you can always go back and forth and, look at those treaties that are on the OSCU site too, and the Lakota site. Native contributions to society, that's important, and Native identity, like individual and community identities, defined and supported by shared Native languages, kinship systems, Teoshpai, clan cultures, traditional teachings, values, sacred laws, and ceremonies, a continuum of tribal identity unique to each individual's range. From assimilated to traditional styles, there is no generic American Indian. So that was a point of discussion too when our work group was revising the South Dakota essential understandings. And we took a lot of if you look at those two different, look at the documents, if you get a chance to look at the 2012 document to the 24, you'll notice that the wording has changed because we took out some of the words that just didn't seem relevant. And, we try not to, but we still do use the word Indian, because it's just kind of up there and it's kind of hard to just make those big sweeping changes. In the older people too, in the elder interviews, they'll say, when we weren't allowed to talk Indian, when they're talking about the boarding schools, and we aren't allowed to speak Indian, that's part of their vocabulary, so we can't just completely erase it.
Yeah, when we were listening to some of those veteran interviews that the Library of Congress has, and it was the same thing. A lot of those older veterans would say, and I went to this school and we talked Indian, and you would hear that term a lot from the older people. You don't hear it so much from young people like you.
Yeah, young people like me. I'm not quite that young, but and we still and there's some of my students like, what are we supposed to call ourselves? Are we Indians? Are we Native Americans? Are we Indigenous people? Are we First Nations people? Like what are we? And that's really that makes me sad because how do we affirm identities if we don't even know what we're supposed to call ourselves? If you get to a chance to look at the Dakota, and I'm back in South Dakota again, so sorry. But this does range, it does go up into North Dakota as well. So the map that was created by Dr. Scott Simpson and Charlotte Stevert, they worked a lot with Lucy Fredericks in she's the Indian Ed director in Bismarck there. They work closely with Lucy, and Lucy's actually from Standing Rock. Yeah, she graduated from McLaughlin, same high school I did. But she works in Bismarck, and she's the North Dakota Indian Education Director. And I was the South Dakota Indian Education Director, so it was kind of a big deal when I was down there for a little bit. But if you go to this map and you hover over the circles, you're gonna get the elder videos. And you can, and I know whenever TIE or these organizations put these out there, they're free to use. You can incorporate them into your lessons, talk about them, watch them on your own. If it's something that you're still learning, watch them. I'll put this one. I don't know if we can hear it.
Some of the fur traders would get together to have 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10 of them or whatever, would get in a group and trap and hunt together. Some of them a little more, only 1 or 2. They get smaller groups together and do their trapping and hunting like that. And some of the fur traders would actually get into some of these local areas where the natives were, and in order to get hunting and trapping privileges on their lands, they would marry into the tribe. And it was not always a one-sided thing. A lot of the native women that were married to the fur trappers were treated very, very well. They were, they'd buy them all kinds of gifts, clothing, cloth, whatever else, beads and whatever else, and they always took really good care of them. So it was not kind of a one-sided thing. A lot of it went married into the tribes to get permission to trap that land.
So you get there by going to the Dakota project and then hovering over one of those?
You can go to, right here, the elder videos. And then you go to the tribal affiliation map and it's there. So
that's really cool.
We have videos from Turtle Mountain, Spirit Lake, and then Fort Berthold.
That's really cool, because one of the things that I wonder about is we've got teachers who are from California and from Hawaii, and yeah, it's great for you if you live in North Dakota and you could ask somebody to come down from Turtle Mountain, and I'm sure they would love to come out to Hawaii, but I don't think it's in most school budgets. And so, yeah, I didn't know that you had those, so you could just go over and, so basically bring an elder into your classroom.
basically.
That's super cool. Did you guys know that existed? Okay, then I'm not the only dumb one there.
So like I said, like some of these people, like Kevin Locke has a video on here, he just passed away like last year. And then Dolores, who is my mother-in-law, one of my mother-in-laws, and that's another explanation, but she is one of my mother-in-laws. She died from COVID. My brother-in-law, Jesse Taken Alive, who I love dearly, passed away from COVID as well. But yeah, he's got some really cool videos in here. And just a little side note, like this is my husband's brother, and he's like 17 years older than my husband. So, but their dad, Pete Taken Alive, he was the first teacher that graduated from a university on the reservation. Yeah. He graduated from Black Hills State and came
So
back.
your son is like third generation teacher?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
And then my dad, when he went to Black Hills State, he stayed with them, and they were really good friends. So education is just swimming in our blood. So anyway, so this is the South Dakota, one of the links that I had shared that Dr. DeMars has, and it is the Rural Dakota Project. And then the second one we were looking at was the Native American understandings in North Dakota, essential understandings, and we kind of were just going over those. And the North Dakota ones are a little shorter, and that's, I think there's still valuable information in here, references, resources, and some of it overlaps. So some of it is gonna go, that you're gonna see in the South Dakota Oceti Sakowin essential understandings is gonna overlap into the North Dakota ones too as well. So we're the same but different, And there's a Venn diagram here that kind of lays out the essential understandings for North Dakota. We could talk about sacred relatives, the four-legged, the two-legged, the winged crawlers, swimmers, like everybody's related. So when we talk about, when we address people, like all of you all, how Madakiapi, are all my relatives, I greet you with a handshake and a good heart. So here, this last page here, that's where it says Dr. Scott Simpson, Technology and Innovation Education, TIE. But like I said, TIE is going by a different name now. They just changed it, and but they still, all of this work is awesome that they've done. Scott and Charla are they're non-native, but they've been welcomed into the Native community and really respected, and they're really true allies, I feel like, for all the tribes that they've worked with in the Native American community. So I talk a little bit about allyship when we do our presentations, and we all need allies. So the new one, when I left and went back to my tribe, Scott and Charla were working with Nebraska to develop something similar, and Nebraska had something already. This is a little bit older, but they were developing essential understandings for Nebraska and their tribes as well. So that's also a resource that that is out there. This isn't the exact same thing as their essential understandings in Nebraska, but it's a guide for teachers, and it's pretty much the same framework as the essential understandings. So I'm just showing this to you so you know that there's also work being done in Nebraska that mirrors South Dakota and North Dakota. So the way I understand it, we started out in South Dakota, and then North Dakota, and then Nebraska, and then Minnesota. So Minnesota actually has essential understandings as well.
Did you know that, Ava? You guys haven't met. Ava's from the University of Minnesota, so. Hi. They're from Minnesota. Yeah. Actually, how many states we got here? Actually, just in the room, because you're from South Dakota, they're from North Dakota, she's from Minnesota, from California. So I'm off task, sorry, Juliana.
You're fine. So there's essential understandings also in Minnesota. And Minnesota's lieutenant governor is Native American as well. Peggy Flanagan, is that her name?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. She was actually one of, I organized a professional development day on Standing Rock for all of the schools on the reservation, and she was gonna be our keynote speaker, but she couldn't make it, so she sent us a really nice video.
Dan made it all the way from Denver.
Hello.
Hello, good to see you.
Good to see you in person.
You all know Dan's plane got delayed twice, so he just came straight from the airport. So what a trooper. I've interrupted Juliana about 7 times and
That's
she hasn't
okay.
punched me
That's
yet.
all right.
So this speaks to her professionalism.
It feels like it's my first time using a computer up here, so I'm sorry. I apologize. So the essential understandings for Minnesota, the framework is a little, I mean, the information is gonna be a little bit different, but let me go back to this map back in the World Dakota site. And you'll see that Minnesota is over here. And so the South Dakota, North Dakota, and Minnesota. So some of our tribes, like, you know, straddle these borders. These aren't the borders that we made. These are the borders that we were given. So our people are, you know, kind of in these regions, but doesn't necessarily mean that's where, you know, they originally came from or anything like that. It's kind of where we were placed. So
Are Dakota in the middle? So that's what I've heard. Is that right?
what's that?
Are Dakota in the central part?
Dakota?
Yeah, of Lakota and Dakota. Are they like kind of in the middle of?
They're down here.
Okay.
Well, the ones that are in
Yeah.
the essential understandings, they're
Yeah.
like the Yankton and Yanktoni
Cool.
down here. And then over here we have Dakota, where the Sistin Waptin.
Mm-hmm.
And I know Sistin isn't pronounced Sistin and in the correct way to say it, not from there, so. Those are the essential understandings for South Dakota, North Dakota, something similar in Nebraska and Minnesota. But if you know, like I'm saying, you don't have to be an expert on anything. That's why these documents were created, is to be a resource and to help people like feel confident about, you know, teaching these things. And it's not, I guess we've run into it a lot in working with teachers in South Dakota, because sometimes there's just not the confidence, like they don't want to do it wrong or they don't want to offend anybody, or it's like, you know, so that's what these are for. And it's like, it's not enough to just learn about Indigenous people and cultures, but it's more important to learn from. So, and that's what this document is, created by, just pull those names up here. These people here, the majority of us are, you know, from one of the tribes in the Oceti Sakowin. So it comes from us, and if we created it for everybody, not just for a certain population, but it's for everybody and anybody that wants to learn more, you know, just as a resource. And I like this project that Dr. DeMars is doing because it lends itself to like including all of these things, you know, like Library of Congress videos and the teaching primary sources, and then the essential understandings. And I don't know, did you go over the growing math and how the like making Camp Lakota and making Camp Dakota, like all of those games are really identity affirming, and especially to like, you know, the young Indigenous students or even like people that are just wanting to learn. Those games are really, I think they're fundamental, they're relevant. Did anybody have any questions about anything?
I wanted to recap, because you know how you go to conferences sometimes and there's things, they draw pictures up there, but I have no artistic talent, so I didn't. But I know we had people kind of wandering in and out. I know some of the people online are like in different time zones, so couldn't make it right on time. So I just wanted to recap, and I also didn't start the recording right away. But I thought, and other people dive in please and add, but there were a few things you said that I've heard you speak before, and I like, how did I miss that? Like, I did not know every OSU standard has a song. I will never ever sing one, but I will find some where they are and play them, because like when we did that presentation at the National Council on Social Studies, and you had like the veteran song, I think that's really cool. And I was that kid that was really good at math and science, and I hated music class because I sucked at it, and I hated art class because I also sucked at that. Oh, I know, I tell my middle school students that suck does not fit in any professional setting whatsoever, but sorry, I blew it. But for kids who really do like art and music, that would be a cool way to start. And I didn't know that. I don't know how I missed it. And I know you say it all the time, but I think it needs repeating that it's not only for Indigenous schools, it's not only for Indigenous students. I know you've said a bunch of times that Lakota children need to learn, not just Lakota children need to learn Lakota history, because it's American history. It's part of America. But I think what you said too about teachers are invited to use them is really important, because as somebody who is not Lakota, I am on that I think everybody's like, well, what if I screw this up? I don't know. So I'm just gonna point to you and say, Juliana, so it's okay. I didn't know there was an online training course. I don't know how I missed that. I'm gonna double check if it's free.
It's free.
Oh, okay, cool. And I didn't know there were links to the original treaties in the OSEU, and since we talk about primary sources, that's important, though I have difficulty, and since we have elementary teachers here, two former elementary teachers, I never taught anything lower than 5th grade, so that's, but I just wonder how difficult it would be for the kids when you give them things that's written in cursive, like old timey, if they would be able to really decipher that.
Probably. Yeah, it's not.
No,
really-
structure,
cursive is not,
scaffolding. For the scaffolding, I think they would get it.
I saw a really cool thing, and it was from a Lewis and Clark, some organization like down around Missouri or that. And what they did is they gave the kids, they would really take 4th graders and bring them in a group of like 4. And so they give them each a couple of paragraphs to decipher, so. And then the other thing, I thought I did not know those elder interviews were there, that you could click on a map and find them. So I just thought that was super cool. So those are my things I thought were super cool. Now I will sit down and be quiet for about 2 minutes until something else comes up.
I have a couple questions.
Yeah.
One, can you share these links? Somewhere, like email us?
Yes, we're gonna email them to everybody.
Second thing, you said something that kind of was eye-opening to me, like, your kids say, what do we call ourselves? Someone clearly not from North Dakota, like, what would you say? Because I have, I guess, backstory, I have a packet that I got from someone, Teachers Pay Teachers, it's about Jamestown, and it has Indians. When I teach it, I very much like flick like Indians, or we call them Native Americans, and I kind of flick back and forth. But I had one student one year that anytime I said Indian, she would be like, oh, Native Americans. And she would get mad about it, and then so I very much caught myself like, okay, I don't want to be wrong, but like, and I had to explain to her, like, that's what they called them back then. Like, this is a primary source or a quote from a Jamestown settler, that's what they would have said. I know that upsets you, but that is the quote from the text. So what, as a teacher, what would you say?
I guess Native American is like the safest, I think, of everything. When you're like, Indigenous is I guess where we're moving into, like when we're changing verbiage in, even like in schools with the Indian education, it's like the Indigenous education, so it's like easier because it starts with an I, so those acronyms stay the same. But I like, I guess when you are an Indigenous person, I just identify as Lakota. So like anybody else, like Native American is fine. Native American is fine. Actually, I'm doing my dissertation. I had to change everything to Native American because Indigenous is not that, people aren't that accepting right now of that. And that took me into a whole nother explanation. I was like, okay, let's back it up, and we'll say Native American. So that's the safest, I guess, and the most politically correct way is Native American.
Juliana, Megan Breitschert Shaw said something online really interesting in a way that I had never thought of before. She said, if you were going to Beijing, you wouldn't say you were going to Asia. And she said, so if you're talking about people who are Lakota, don't say Native American, say Lakota. And like in our games, like on the Gory Math site, if we have something about, but I thought, that makes most sense. So if we have something about Lakota history, it'll say Lakota. If it's about Ojibwe history, it'll say Ojibwe. But then sometimes, like with the Warrior Vets game, it's not a specific tribe. So then it says Native American.
Right, and just like North Dakota's essential understandings are Native American understandings because it's not one specific tribe.
But when she said it, that makes perfect sense. She said, if you know the tribe, say that.
Yeah.
And it makes sense when somebody says it to you, but I don't think it.
It does, but I think that level of like where Megan's at is kind of an advanced level because first of all, she's an Indigenous person herself, and then
She's on Harvard, so she's she's kind of high level.
I mean, so I'm just saying like, and levels of like confidence in identifying, like I think just by saying Native American, that's most comfortable and that's not offensive. Indian is just offensive. and like we said, our elders still say that, like we talk Indian, did you get your Indian name? They don't even know that's just how they learned how to speak English, so that's just what they say, you know? There aren't very many of them left, but that's how they talk, and that's just acceptable because of their age. But like,
Well, there's the NAACP, right? It's the national, what is it? The National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. That's what the NAACP stands for. So yeah, it's like older.
yeah, so I mean, and as we move further along into like the younger folks, we're gonna get more into Indigenous and then more into specific tribes. If you're not confident enough, like if you don't know what tribe, like you don't know what tribe I'm from, like you're not gonna say, oh, that's Juliana, she's Lakota, Minikoju Lakota, like no. And I wouldn't.
If they came up with that, I would have been impressed, wouldn't you?
It would affect us too.
Right.
like-
Yes.
Yeah.
And back to the Asia thing, if you knew where Beijing was on a map, okay, but I don't know where the territory would be that I'm so.
Yeah.
Native American.
Yep, safe.
Safe, yeah, okay.
Safe.
Good question. And then my last question for you, you said you're from South Dakota, you drove up?
Mhm.
Okay, because I know that me and Dan tried to connect earlier this year to have like a Native American tribe in North Dakota come in and show us some artifacts. So that was like one of our lessons, was talking about different tribes and artifacts. Do you have any contacts of like people in North Dakota education? So I think, Dan, you just had someone that was in a tribe that might be able to come in, and then it didn't end up working out, and we were gonna try and Zoom, and then we said, like, no, let's
She's
have
my-
I want someone to come in and give us something that they can look at.
You might want
Do
to
you
talk
have
to
any-
Annette, who's running the powwow. I mean, maybe when things come down a little bit, because I came to a session, I just happened to be mine at, and she had somebody come up, and I don't know if this is what you're looking for. She talked about, the person talked about regalia. It was a man, and he went through each of these different things. Actually, Zach, you're on here. Zach King, you know a lot, and you live in North Dakota, and don't be shy. You could come. I mean, you sing and dance, and you could come and talk about regalia and bring things, couldn't you?
Anything for you?
I heard anything for you, so that means we'll grab your contact, share it with her. And there's a difference too, don't be mean, but like just from someone from a tribe and then someone with an education background, like coming in and teaching the kids a little bit more about it, like that's what I wanted them to get. Because we do a lot of primary and secondary sources. Someone to come in and show this is a primary source, and this is an artifact, and this is what we do with it, really teaching the kids.
Yeah, I think like a good touch point too is Lucy, Lucy Fredericks. Like I said, she's in Bismarck, she's the Indian Education Director. Or what do they call it? It's the Indian Education.
Education,
Yeah.
yeah.
So she would have, like, if you wanted to connect with Scott and Charla, she would probably connect you, I could connect you with Scott and Charla, who did all this work and that know like so many people. And I rely on them, like I said, they're like true allies to our tribes because they're non-native, but they've established themselves that they're not here to like make money or take our culture and sell it or they don't have ulterior motives. They're just trying to help people learn more about Indigenous history and culture.
I just think that's such a great experience for the kids, not only for me to like go, hey, this is what this tribe is, and this is, so I think in our book it talks about all the tribes of the different regions of the United States, and then it gives them pictures of artifacts, which is great and fun, but it's so much better.
Yeah,
There's someone
yeah.
here that's actually from a tribe in the Midwest that can.
I'm just really trying to think hard, like any museum studies type of.
Yeah, the student I was referring, or she was my grad student, is who I was going to send to you, Zoe, and she just couldn't get off at that time. We've had a lot of good luck with the MHA Interpretive Center, and they have like an Arikara group and a Hidatsa group and a Mandan group, and a lot of times they'll come out. Sometimes they'll want something for their time, which is understandable, and sometimes teachers don't have a lot of budget, and then, Annette Menem is probably one of the best contacts. When you had asked me that, I asked like people on campus that I know, and a lot of them didn't feel comfortable talking in front of kids. They're like, I don't want to, do that. And it was hard to like make them,
That's that educational piece sometimes.
Yeah.
So they have that educational like background or they can come in and explain.
Zach's actually on this call, and he said he would come talk to your class, and he's from Turtle Mountain and has a master's in tribal administration.
Okay, will you share his info with me, email, whatever, however you contact all of us?
Yes. Right? Oh, I don't, the camera's not on, me waving at
And
this
I
didn't
just
do
wanted to
anything.
share one more thing. Last November, Dr. DeMars and I went to Boston for the National Council of Social Studies conference gathering. And there was one thing that I think he was the president, I don't remember the acronym, but it was like of all of the history. So he did the PowerPoint about, they surveyed, they got together and they were tasked with finding out like, what do people want to know about, or what do they, you know, in terms of social studies. And I had that slide because I took a picture of it, but it was like the number one thing, like all the way across the nation in schools was like, what do people feel like they don't have enough resources, or they don't get to, and it was Native American history, like all the way across. That was the number one thing, and it was like there's not enough resources, and they want to know. Oh, it was pre-colonization. That's what people wanted to know. That's what they wanted to learn about, and that's what they wanted to teach their kids. And that was the number one thing on his slides. Do you remember
Yeah,
that?
I remember that presentation.
Yeah, yeah. It
National.
was an organization that was tasked with doing like the survey
Yeah.
to survey like all the social studies teachers, and that was the number one thing that every teacher wanted, that just about every teacher wanted more information on pre-colonization Native American history of that book. But it's a true Indigenous history, like it's, the chapter that was really fascinating to me in that book was about like the transportation systems in the country, but pre-colonization, like we had the ancestors had like transportation, like roads and freeway systems and like parts to travel all over, and how to cross rivers and before anybody got here. You know, so there was like life happening prior to anybody getting here. This is kind of a glimpse into like what that was like, relationships with other tribes. But there's also, okay, so this book, it's by Roxanne Ortiz, and there's a student copy. So it's like a big thick book that you can read and like reference and use it for whatever. But then there's also, she makes a version for students, like high school, middle school students, so that you can use it in a classroom. And that's what I was thinking of when that came up at the National Council of Social Studies, when they brought that statistics forward. I was like, well, this would be a really good book to start out with.